صلوا على طبيب قلوبنا محمد.
اللهم صل على سيدنا شفينا مولانا محمد بارك وسلم صلاة والسلام عليك سيدي يا رسول الله.
I'll speak up a little bit more now.
And could you ask everyone to move forward?
Can you all move forward? Don't be shy. Alhamdulillah, you're here to celebrate the birth of the man who, if he wasn't born, you wouldn't be here tonight. So why are you all sitting back there lounging around? You should be excited. Believers need to be excited, not because of the promises that Allah gives us. Believers are never proud, because a believer is a faqir. He is a person without anything. He is impoverished, because the believer is in the shade of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, al-Ghani, al-Jabbar, al-Qahar, al-Halim, al-Latif. And so the believer is in the shade, in the security of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The believer is content with whatever Allah apportions to him. Whatever you receive, you have your ridha in that. And we should be grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for what He has poured out upon us. He brings us forth when we were nothing. Once was nothing. كان الله ولم يكن معه شيء وهو الآن على ما كان عليه. Allah was and there was nothing. Allah was and there was nothing. Yes. And He is as He always was. If I say something tonight and you need me to stop and to repeat myself or to clarify, do not hesitate or be shy. It's only in saying you don't know, and asking questions that you will increase in knowledge. And it's a consistent problem amongst us as Muslims in our communities that we fail to ask questions. And even though I'm sitting up here, I am the least knowledgeable of any of you, and I'm the most sinful of you, because I know my affair better than you. But I have hope and expectation that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will fulfill His promises, and the person who says La ilaha illallah will enter paradise. But you should understand that to if La ilaha illallah, and it is the key to paradise, every key has teeth, and without those teeth, the doors will never open. When Rasulullah Sallallahu, alaihi, returned to his wife, our mother, Sayyidatuna Khadija anha, when wahi came to him and he was trembling, we cannot imagine what it is to physically experience the intervention of the words of God, revelation on a human body. If, as we are told in the Quran, had the Quran descended upon a mountain, it would shatter. So he returns to his wife, our mother, and she eventually, as you know, takes him to her cousin, Waraka ibn Nawfal. And as you know, he was a man in Jahiliyyah who became a Christian, and was familiar with texts. And when he asked Muhammad ﷺ about what he experienced, and the Prophet ﷺ told him, one of the things that Waraka said is that your people will throw you out of your city. And there's a big echo now in the microphone. So if we could take care of that, please. So when Rasulullah ﷺ heard this from Waraka, he said, will they do that? Waraka said, there is no prophet who came with what you have brought except that his people would cast him out. And so, those years when Rasulullah was in Mecca and the Muslims, those who came to Islam, were being grounded in fundamentals of Iman, things came to a head, and Rasulullah ﷺ was forced, so to say, to leave Mecca. He went to Ta'if. When he went to Ta'if, and you know the story, the nobles ignored him, belittled him. They cast him out of the city, and they encouraged the youth to follow the beloved of Allah Sallallahu, alaihi wasallam, to throw stones at him. And if we think about this, his being cast out of Ta'if after the city he loved, Mecca. Remember on his hijrah, he turned back and looked at Mecca and said, had my people not my people cast me out, I would never have left you. The man of paradise, Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, his heart is attached to those things that remind you of paradise, and the Haram as a sacred place, and the Kaaba as a building mirroring that which is in paradise. It is not except that he would look back towards the Qibla of life, the structures of the city in a sacred valley, but he had to go into exile, because it's going into exile out of paradise that human perfections are attained. Had we stayed in paradise, as Adam as-Salam was, we would never have the opportunity now to attain to things that otherwise we would not have. And what I mean by that is that we have never have truly come to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as Allah is. Had we stayed in paradise, we never would have known Allah as Ghafoor, forgiver. Well, there would have been nothing to be forgiven of, for example. And you would never know Allah as At-Tawwab, because there never would have been one to turn back to in Tawbah. So being out of paradise allows a human being, if he or she is so inclined, to attain to his or her kamalat, perfections. But unfortunately, how many of us may fall under the warning of Rasulullah alaihi sallam, وَيُبِيعُ دِينُهُ بِعَرَضٍ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا قَلِيلٍ, that he will sell his religion for a little bit of the dunya. Be mindful of that. We cannot gather and remember the birth of Muhammad ﷺ except to remind ourselves that our time, our sojourn, our sa'i in this world is but a short time. And our return, our rujua', is to one whose mercy outstrips his wrath, and yet he's still one who owns and possesses adabun shadidun, a painful punishment. We must not allow ourselves to be complacent and still to have our itminan, our tranquility in this dunya, except to see it as a portal and a mazra'ah, a agricultural field by which we sow our harvest, which is iman and amal, according to the Quran and Sunnah, that we harvest some of it in this life, but the fullness of the harvest is Yawm al-Qiyamah and in paradise. When Rasulullah was outside of Ta'if, and he was in the vineyard, and he was bleeding, Zayd was with him. He made that dua. He called out to Allah. He said, this dua, tonight I want to really speak of. It is a dua that you should memorize and you should understand. This dua precedes Rasulullah's ascension, is being brought to paradise. There is something in the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu. Al-ulama warath anbiya. Ulama, people of true knowledge, are inheritors of the prophets. You know that when you sin, a black spot is put on your heart. Through your eyes, through your hands, through your ears, through your feet. Through your organs of sense, your physicality, your bodies, your spiritual reality is immediately affected. There is a morsel of flesh. إِذَا صَلَحَتْ صَلَحَ جَسْدُ كُلُّهُ. If it is sound and healthy, the whole body is healthy. You know this to be the heart. You receive impressions of the world upon your heart. If you listen to a certain song, I mentioned this the other day in a talk. If you listen to a certain song, you will get an effect. It's a neologism. That means it's a new word that's been coined this year in 2011, officially in the English language, which is called an earworm. An earworm is a song that you can't get, it's stuck in your head, you can't get out. Okay? So these things of the world impress you. Muhammad ﷺ physically ascended to paradise with the body that he was born with. His feet, his hands, his ears, his nose, the organs of his body experienced paradise as you now experience this room. And his eyes, the most important sense you have, saw paradise. And just as your soul and your heart is given impressions of this world, you might call that imagination, when an image is impressed upon you. Muhammad ﷺ saw paradise and hellfire, and the impressions of that realm were imprinted upon his blessed soul. But he got more than that. Of the tabaqat of paradise he ascended, and he went to past Bayt al-Ma'mur, the maqam of Sayyidina Ibrahim alaihi, sallam in paradise. He went to the Sidrat al-Muntaha, the lote tree of the outermost boundary, under which at its base the rivers of paradise originate, and the knowledge of angels finds their limit. He went beyond that, and his eyes saw what he saw, and he heard what he heard. And when he was asked by Ibn Abbas, Ya Rasulullah, what did you see? He said, Raytu Nooran, I saw light. He received impressions of Ru'yatullah, the vision of Allah. And we cannot imagine what that means. We cannot understand what that means. But what you can take from that tonight is that he returned back from paradise. And those impressions, the experience, the sensation, the reality that he experienced imprinted upon his blessed soul, he brought those back with him in the morning after the Mi'raj, and he went out to the people of Mecca and began to tell them of his night journey. And of this ummah, we have this gift, the gift of spiritual relationship from Rasulullah Sallallahu, alaihi, sallam through his ashab and the tabi'een and the tabi'een. He said, Sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Tuba liman ra'ani wa tuba liman ra'a man ra'ani wa tuba liman ra'a man ra'ani. Good news, a blessing to one who has seen me.
Subhanallah. Subhanallah.
A blessing to one who has seen one who has seen me.
Subhanallah. Subhanallah.
A blessing to one who has seen one who has seen one who has seen me.
Subhanallah.
This is an evidence used by our ulama. For example, for the transmission in the spirit, in the various spiritual paths, the turuq of the people of tasawwuf, of the authority of the silsila, the authority of the chain of mashayikh. Spiritual realities which are part of prophetic inheritance, the mirath of the prophets, is not merely transmission, is not mere transmission of knowledge that you get through your physical senses by hearing the Quran recited or transmitting a hadith. But it is also the transmission of realities that are impressions upon the soul of Muhammad ﷺ and transmitted to his companions and transmitted to the tabi'een and transmitted to the tabi'een and the generations after them. This is an inheritance that we have. So keep this in mind. So he was there in the vineyard, and he speaks to Allah Azza wa Jal. Allahumma inni ashku ilayka. Oh Allah, I complain to you. In the Quran, you find a narrative in the Quran of another who complained to Allah. قال إنما أشكو بثي وحزني إلى الله وأعلم من الله ما لا تعلمون. These are the words of Yaqub alayhi salam. After Sayyidina Yusuf had been gone for all those years in Egypt, and the brothers of Yusuf are sent Benjamin to Egypt. And Yusuf has his hila. He plays a trick in order to keep Benjamin. So he puts the cup into the bag of grain. So the older brothers return back to their father in his agedness, whose eyes are white out of huzn, out of sadness, from seeing the most beloved son, the most beautiful man after Muhammad in the world, Yusuf. And of course, this narrative in the Quran of Sayyidina Yusuf and of his father Yaqub alayhi salam is not really a narrative of two prophets and a relationship between a father and a son. It is a narrative of the Jamal of Allah, the beauty of Allah, and the narrative of being separated from the beauty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of a soul that is separated from beauty. And there is great huzn, and you become the name of Abdul Qadir of al-Rumi, Maulana Rumi. You become the reed that's plucked out of the reed bed. And when you are played, the wind blows through you, the name makes that mellow, sad sound of the name as it longs for paradise. And Najruddin Kubra, rahimahullah, how he speaks and he wrote of the descent of the soul, how the soul comes in to the world, veil upon veil. Between the soul and Allah are 70,000 veils of light and darkness, and how we are separated by Allah. Huzn, sadness must be the state of the believer when you are separated from love and beauty. And so Yaqub was separated from love and beauty, manifested in the face of Yusuf alayhi salam. And when his sons consoled him and tried to get him out of his sadness, and he says, Innama ashku, I complain, but bathi of my sadness, wa huzni, and my regret, illallah, to Allah. وَأَعْلَمُ مِنَ اللَّهِ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. And I know that of Allah which you do not know. There are things I know, as Yaqub, your father, about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the purpose of my sadness, and the whiteness of my eyes, of being separated from love, of being separated from beauty, that you do not know, my sons. And this is the only place in the Quran you get this usage of ashku, I complain to Allah. And then you have Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam being cast out of Mecca, of being turned out of Ta'if, of being stoned. And he is there in a vineyard. Allahumma ashku ilayka, oh Allah, I complain to you. And this complaint of Muhammad is not a complaint of regret. It is not the foolish Muslim who complains to Allah because he doesn't want to accept the qadr of Allah. He doesn't want to accept the qada of Allah. He's not happy with what Allah has given him. When Rasulullah said to Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radhiyallahu anhu, take from me these words and teach them and practice them yourself, And if you can't practice them, Abu Hurairah, then you will teach them to people who will practice them. And he gave me these 5 words. This is what Abu Hurairah says. And one of the things that he learned from Rasulullah sallallahu irda bima qasma Allah takun agna nas. Be content, have rida with whatever Allah, qasam Allah, whatever Allah has apportioned for you, whatever you get, whether it's a half a cup, or 3/4 of a cup, or a full cup, or a gallon, or a well, whatever you get, be content with what Allah gives you to you in your taqseem, in your portion. Takun agna nas, you will be the wealthiest of people. You will have wealth. And he says, sallam, al-ghina, ghina an-nafs, and wealth is the wealth of the self. So he makes this dua, sallam. Allahumma inni ashku ilayka dha'fa quwwati. The first thing he complains about to his Lord, oh Allah, I complain to you of the weakness, the infirmity of my own strength, my quwwah. That's the first thing. Wa qillata hilati. And I complain to you of the weakness of my stratagem. I have left Mecca. I have come to Ta'if. I came to Ta'if, coming to seek these people, that one person who is wealthy, who is of a powerful tribe, that perhaps he might be my wakil, that he might be able to be my guarantor for me. Because I live in a tribal society, and if you don't have a strong man, a strong family, a strong clan to protect you, then you are of the mustadafin, you are of the weak ones, you are the oppressed ones. So he's working within the context of how people of his time go about securing themselves in their tribal community. So he complains, Allahumma inni ashku ilayka dha'fa quwwati wa qillata hilati wa hawani ala nas. And the third thing he complains about is his hawani, that I am humiliated, of my humiliation, of my low status among people. And yet he was of the best of mankind. He was of the lineage of Ibrahim. He was the lineage of Ismail. He was of the best of the Arab. He was of the Bani Hashim, of the Quraysh, and he was of the Bani Hashim. He was the best of them. He was the grandson. His grandfather, who was given the honor of restoring Zamzam in preparation for the coming and the birth. His grandfather, the grandfather of Rasulullah, was aware among the people of Arabia in the mid-6th century that there would be a great prophet coming, and his name would be Muhammad. Sallallahu. And so his grandfather was hoping that the son, the child that his son Abdullah had sired, would perhaps, maybe he was this man who would be this prophet. Because already he was gifted and honored with restoring Zamzam after it had been lost for generations. And that gave prestige to the Banu Hashim among the Arabs, that Zamzam was restored to this clan. And so when his grandson was born, he gave him the name Muhammad, that perhaps this one born this orphan would be that one who was being spoken of as perhaps the prophet to come. It was a rare name. There were a few others of his generation who were also given the name Muhammad. So Muhammad ﷺ was born. Now he is years later with his freed slave, adopted son. That's what Muhammad ﷺ does. He frees people. He brings them into... He frees people and gives them new relationships. For example, Zayd, adopting him, was so out of the norm of his people. And so he raises his hands, he makes his dua. So he prays for, he complains about his what? About the weakness that he is with people. Ya Arhamar Rahimin, O merciful of the most merciful ones. Anta Rabbul Mustadafin, you are the Lord of those who are weak. You are the Lord of those who are characterized with incapacity. Wa anta Rabbi, and you are my Lord. The first thing after he complains, he puts out before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in soliciting Allah's mercy. The first thing he does is he mediates between the mercy of Allah, the people who are qualified with weakness. And then he says, and you are my Lord. Ila man, to whom? Tarakuni, to who would you who would you entrust me with? Who would you entrust me with? Illa ba'idin, to someone who's not of my city, someone who's far away, he's ba'id, he's not there. This person who's not near me, he's no family, there's no family there in Taif. He's by himself. Yatahajamuni, someone who will do what? He's going to look at me and look at me in a negative with this frown on his face, look at me in a bad way. He'll say, oh, who's this poor man? I'll take him in. His own tribe kicked him out. Is this the person, oh Allah, you're going to entrust me with? Or are you going to entrust me to an enemy? Malakatahu, and you'll give to him amri, my affair. You're going to trust my affair to an enemy? In lam yakun bika alayya ghadabun fala ubali. Oh Allah, after this, O merciful, the merciful ones, are you going to trust me to someone who's not my family and I'm outside of my city? I'm here in this vineyard. You're going to put my affair into an enemy's hand? People who stone me? People who mock me? By mocking me, they mock you. And if this happens, this deen is gone. It's gone. The salvation of humanity will be cut off. Tawheed will be wrapped up, lost, just as Zamzam was lost and the Kaaba was corrupted. Will this happen again? It will happen between Mecca and Taif. Will it happen now? So if you're not angry with me, if you are angry with me, Allah, فَلَا أُبَالِي, I'm okay with that. You know, that means what? It won't be on my head. I'm not going to get a headache out of it. I'm okay. وَلَكِنْ but عَافِيَاتُكَ هِيَ أَوْسَعُ لِي. But Allah, you know what? Your afiyah, your compassion, your benevolence, your fullness in giving. A'usa means what? It's more expansive for me. I'm in dire situation right now. I'm physically in pain. But your afiyah is even better for me. It's better for me. Inni a'udhu. Then he said, I seek refuge. Bin-nur wajhika. I seek refuge in the light of your countenance. This is how he brings his dua. I seek refuge in the light of your countenance. That's so beautiful. But what is this light of the countenance? الذي أشرقت له الظلمات. That by which you have illuminated darkness. Allah created everything in darkness. None of us like darkness. You fear the darkness of your grave. People fear the darkness in their homes at night. A dark street. We are creatures of light. We seek light. One of the first things that defines us as human beings is our capacity to control fire, for example. Light. Heat. And that is something that is so human. It makes us unique. So I seek refuge in the light of the countenance of your countenance of your face, by which you have illumined by it darkness. For everything you created, this is the subtext of the dua, you created in darkness, and the light of Iman is cast out in the hadith. And we're very fortunate to have that light of Iman. And on the day of judgment, how many of us will rise up from our graves, from darkness, with light on our hands, light on our feet, light from our faces, from the wudu that you made, from the sadaqah that you gave, from the places of your body that touched the ground in sajda. When Iblis, alaihi, would not make sajda, you made those sajdas. You don't let it go to your head though. Gifts to you from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he makes this dua that continues in with soliciting the light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I'm forgetting the dua, believe it or not, I can't see, so I'm reminding myself here. وَصَلَّى عَلَيْهِ أَمْرُ الدُّنْيَا وَآخِرَةِ. And by this light, you correct and you make right the affairs of this life and the life to come. This light of Allah is a means of islah, of making things right, of making things healthy, of making things wholesome. If you as a Muslim turn away from this light and you try to live your life without this light, you are doomed back to darkness. Don't play games with yourself as a Muslim. So he sought refuge in Allah, in the light, and this light which is a light which restores and corrects and makes right the things, the affairs of this dunya. Min an yunzala alayya ghadabuka. So that your anger doesn't descend upon me. He sought refuge in Allah's light. This light which makes things correct and sound in the dunya, so that the anger of Allah will not come upon him. Because the anger of Allah goes back to those things where there is darkness. أَوْ يُحُلَّ عَلَيَّ, or that something else will come upon me. Sakatuka, your anger. Again, he seeks refuge in Allah's anger. From his anger. Not this would happen to him. لَكَ عُتْبَ حَتَّى تَرْضَى. Oh Allah, to you is the utbah. You know, I'm before you and I'm bringing myself humbly before you. I'm debasing myself before you and I'm waiting for the result of this dua. I'm waiting for it hatta tarda, until you are content. Until your rida is found. Until your rida, you are content in this affair. وَلَا حَوْلَ وَلَا قُوَّةَ إِلَّا بِكَ. And there is no hawl and there is no quwwah except in you. He began his dua by saying, I complain to you, da'fa quwwati, the weakness of my own strength. And he wraps up his dua in doing what? In affirming that there is no strength and no capacity except in you, O Allah. It's a beautiful dua. There's a lot of hope for us in that. And then what happens? Allah answers his dua. He is able to get, Allah uses the asbab of his time. And he gets a man promises to be his waqil. He goes back to Mecca. He is now in the eyes of his people, in their tribal mindset. He's now protected again, but now things are changing. The changes are taking place. This will be a temporary affair because he will now be given his ascension. He will experience realities that we cannot even imagine, that we benefit from, and then he will make his hijrah. He will be exiled, a real exile. To where? To Al-Madinah, where civilization will begin. Where civilization will begin. Where true human beings, they are being prepared, and it will occur then. These are things you should think of. It's a beautiful dua. Inshallah will give you, all of us, the tawfiq to understand its words, to memorize it, to think about it, ponder it. You have been given gifts. I said it in this mosque, many times I've spoken here. Don't be a mediocre Muslim. Don't be an average Muslim. Excel. You only have a few days of your life left. Life is very short. If you don't seize the opportunity now, you'll never get them back. You're born with only so many breaths to breathe, and when they're gone, they're gone. You can't get each breath back. Believers are not deceived, and they're not deceiving. They have their wits about them. They make mistakes. They stumble, they fall, but they get back up. They get back up in tawbah and istighfar and with istiqamah, and they continue towards Mecca. They focus on Mecca. They focus on that which leads us back to paradise. They take the hand of the man who leads the caravan, Muhammad Sallallahu. They cling to his saddle, they cling to his stirrup, they cling to his rein on his camel, they cling, and if they can't cling to it, they find the trail he left in the sand, and they even follow that. And in our time, the sands of time are blowing across the trail of Muhammad ﷺ. So we have to be very good archaeologists to uncover his way and to know it. May Allah give us tawfiq for that. May He bless us through His birth, which is a blessing for us. May He give us fullness of iman. May He, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, give us amal that He is pleased with, that He is content with. May we be content with the Quran. May we be content with Allah as our Lord, with Muhammad as our Prophet, with Islam as our deen, with Quran as our revealed book. May He keep our feet firm. May He keep us focused. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Jazakumullah khairan.
Subhanallah.